All right, what's up, listeners? Welcome back to Predator vs. Movies. I'm Alex.
I'm Aidan. No Peter.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I'm catching on. And this is a podcast where we discuss and review the latest movie releases. We're going to start off with a non-spoiler review before diving into a deeper discussion of the film, and then we're going to ask the most important question: would this movie be better if the alien from Predator was in it? This week, we are going to be reviewing The Holdovers, the new Alexander Payne movie. But before we do so, we are going to go through some news, and then the trailer park, and then we will get into our discussion. So first off, we have news, which is maybe forever changed to this new segment, which we like better, called Quick Bites.
Because it's faster.
It's faster, and we don't really talk. We don't have to think or talk about it.
Yeah.
So to recap, Quick Bites is essentially I have a headline, and Aidan reacts with one-word responses.
And I also did forget. That's the sound.
Yes,
that's the sound for it.
The sound bite. Yeah. The sound bite.
Yeah,
Ooh,
exactly.
Literally. So first up, Tim Allen wants Toy Story 5 to follow adult Andy trying to find and reunite all of his old toys for his child.
Grown.
What did you say?
I said grown.
Grown, and he's shaking his head no.
Yeah.
This isn't a one-word answer, but I was thinking this is the same as, like, Infinity War, Part 1, Part 2.
I just mean that he's a grown adult. Like, let the guy go to college or something, man.
It's for his child. So that's the explanation. But next up, Taika Waititi, we talked about this. Taika Waititi says his Star Wars movie is, quote, gonna piss people off. Quote, it will be, dramatic pause, he said this out loud, a Taika Waititi film, end quote, and that's from Variety.
Believe. I believe him that it will piss people off.
I'll chime in there, bad.
Yeah.
Or how about this, don't.
Don't, yeah.
Next up, we have Bob Iger, who says Frozen 4 is also in the works.
Stop.
I was gonna say what? 3? 4? I feel like we're skipping some here. Next up, Young Sheldon ends on May 16th.
Sad.
The word
Bazinga.
choice. Ends. Young Sheldon ends. He dies.
He's gonna die.
It's an alternate universe.
Yeah, the reveals that it was never a prequel series. It's just a different guy, and he died at the end of the series.
I'm sure you never watched. Did you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yeah, I did actually.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you watch the whole thing?
No, I stopped at like season 4 or something.
Okay, so eventually we get to a point where, like, the show, the whole premise was like, this is the MCU, but like the small side where like you kind of, it's trickled down, but it's never going to trickle up.
Rose up to a different level.
That's the thing, is that then all of a sudden they said, I don't care what the MCU is doing, we're in a different universe. And they just fully were like, this isn't the same, because Thanos didn't happen. Or they mentioned Thanos, and then like a bigger threat for the TV show happened that was not Thanos related. So that's what Young Sheldon is what I'm saying. Yeah. More Taika Waititi for you. He says, I know that I won't be involved in Thor 5. I'm going to concentrate on these other films that I've signed on for, and that's from Insider.
Good, but lose-lose. I don't know. It's a lose-lose situation here. He works on it, he doesn't. I don't want another Thor movie. I don't want another Taika Waititi Thor movie. I don't really want another Taika Waititi movie at all. It's just losses all around. Like, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Next we have Chris Pratt's Garfield voice has been revealed.
Awesome.
From discussing film. Last news I have for you. After news, this is real. After news of Warner Brothers shelving Coyote vs. Acme, this is going to be the live-action hybrid movie with John Cena. So it turns out they're going to shelve it. After that news broke, several filmmakers instructed their reps to cancel meetings they had on the books with Warner Brothers.
Good. Cool.
I agree. That is, I don't understand how Warner Brothers thinks this is a good business model to like just show their true colors. Like
to show filmmakers we will
don't
potentially
care. Yeah, we'll shelve your shit and we won't give a fuck because we'll get a lot of money for it. That's just awful.
Yeah,
I don't see how that's like to save on marketing. Like just drop it. Like just
it's also
a
a tax thing. I don't know. Like they get a certain tax credit or whatever for shelving it, but I don't know what the process looks like, but it's still stupid regardless.
Yeah. Next we have some more positive stuff to get through, and that is the trailer park.
Vroom, vroom.
And let me tell you, we have some real treats for today. And do you have a preference which one we should start with? Best for last or best first?
I don't even know. Well, I guess the best is Madam Web, right?
I think you mean the Spider Woman.
I mean, the Spider movie or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should do that first.
We should do that first? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to start with, I was just browsing YouTube and I saw it like as one of the recommended things for whatever I was watching. And I was like, they're released. That's real. Like they're doing this movie. Okay. And I felt so soon. Like I didn't know when it was coming out, and there's a trailer all of a sudden, but it's like the official thing. I'm like, okay. So like I watch it. Flabbergasted. That's my one word response.
Yeah. This
Like,
is potentially the worst looking movie I've like seen from a trailer like in a really long time. Like the suit of the spider guy, the bad spider guy who's chasing them, that is a fan film. That is a fan film suit.
I'll take that one further. The whole movie looks like a fan film. Like there was the I don't know if you heard about this, but like Spider-Man Lotus was this fan film that was big
that was
on Twitter
racist
for a while.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, racist Spider-Man, yes.
Right, yeah.
And I saw, like, I think I might have watched the trailer for that just out of curiosity. This looks literally the same level of quality, maybe worse than that movie. Like that's what we're talking about. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, and then I mean, of course, there's the classic line where she's like, "Yeah, he was." Yeah. What is it? He was with my dad. What the fuck is it? When he was with my mom in the Amazon right before she died when she was studying spiders or something.
I'll find it because we were sending each other memes about it.
It's Dakota Johnson it's a terrible line, but not doing anything to try and sell it either. Like just reading it.
So I have all the different versions of it, but it was the essence is being in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders just before she
before she died. Yeah. It's like,
oh man,
it's the kind of sentence like you read. It's like, is that a run-on? I don't think it's technically a run-on sentence, but like it's not a good sentence. You're
delivering 4 pieces of information in one sentence, which is, I think, too many. I think I'll draw the line at least at 4.
Yeah,
that's a lot. I think some of that information needs to be dropped.
Some of it needs, or just a different sentence. Like if it's so essential to get it out.
I think the most important part of the sentence, "she died," is saved for last. Is kind of odd, and there's some superfluous information before that.
Yeah, like when the Amazon is not. Yeah,
she was studying spiders. Oh, she died too, by the way.
She also died.
Anyways, that looks. I'm so excited. Do you think we do? Do we do it for the pod? Do we pod Spider?
I would honestly do that, and we should also do Craven. We should do that. We should do Craven. That's the thing. And we should do Venom 3.
Craven, Venom, Morbius, all of them have looked significantly better than this movie. How is that possible?
That is true.
Like I think this could be the worst movie in history. Like there is a chance.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways.
But in the Sydney Sweeney connected universe.
The Sydney Sweeney cinematic universe, the SCU.
Yeah.
The SSQ. There's a new trailer for Anyone But You.
Yes.
After the just awful teaser that came out, the director I think even had to say something. He was like, "Yeah, I don't know about that. That was weird." I gave I think even he was like, it seemed like someone was gonna kill someone. Like it seems more like a thriller than a rom com.
Yeah.
I
will say though,
this straightens it out a little bit.
this
Totally.
straightens out. Does it look like a good movie though?
No.
I don't think so. No, no, I still don't think it looks good.
No.
And the reason why I thought this was funny to bring up is because for The Curse, the Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone show, that is also, it's already streaming actually. They did like kind of a mock, a sort of like mock parody of the trailer, of the opening of the trailer, where it's like, we're here to promote my movie. Don't you mean my movie? Like that, like they do that kind of thing. And then Nathan Fielder released this whole statement talking about how they ripped him off. I thought that's a good bit. I like that. That's a funny bit.
It's just proof that like Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone are so much funnier and have.
It's also because they
like,
literally just deliver the same thing way better. Like,
yeah. It's both like surface level of the same thing. It's better, and then also ironically, like you can sense the irony in them doing it. Whereas the Sydney Sweeney, like it's not even part of the movie, just them facing camera. It's bad. That part of it is bad. And I still don't. I think I finally understand the relationship going into the movie, the characters, which was very not clear in the first one. It was like, oh man, I can't believe it's you, anyone but you. And I'm like, who?
But who?
You like cousins? Like, yeah, I hope anyone but you. Like, that'd be really weird. They're not cousins, as we found out. They'll never shift back.
This is gonna make our family so mad. It's like, it probably would.
That's like Arrested Development. There's some, I don't know. He takes his clothes off. Maybe that's funny. I don't know. I think the what's the one with Jennifer Lawrence? That'll be the one that people are gonna be like, oh, that was the good one from this year.
Oh, No Hard Feelings.
That's it. Yes.
I didn't see that.
Rom-coms are soft coming back, maybe. Maybe nature is healing. Anyways, speaking of nature healing and things coming back, actually this does kind of work. We watched a movie.
We did.
Aidan is going to tell you about it.
This time I already have it locked and loaded. The Wikipedia page is up. Yep. So we watched a movie called The Holdovers. It's directed by Alexander Payne, written by David Hemmingson. Starring Paul Giamatti, Divine Joy Randolph, and Dominic Sessa. Cinematography by Egil Brild. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Release date originally was at Telluride at August 31st, 2023, and then has gotten a more wide release on October 27th, 2023, at least in the United States, and then it came even more recently in Canada. Runtime's 133 minutes. Box office is $8.4 million. I don't have the budget up, though. Let me try to find that. Where's the budget? So I'm seeing one thing saying 30 million, but I don't know if that's true. And it is paywalled. So I don't know what the budget is.
Well, good to know. Now that we've told you what we're watching, we are going to play a little game. And this game is called the Predacritic Game. We are going to guess what the score of this movie is on the critic website Metacritic, where scores are averaged out of 100. I said that backwards. Usually I say it the other way around. I've spun our little random wheel generator, and it does tell me that I'm going first. It generates wheels, and then those wheels are spun to determine. Anyway, so I'm going to guess the score first. Okay. I feel like it's always hard with two.
Yeah.
Always hard with two, because you're very, very much either right or wrong.
Yeah.
82. That's what I'll go with.
I'm going to go 81.
Okay.
Going to come right in with it.
That's the thing. That is the thing, isn't it?
Could be wrong.
Well, here we go. So, sometimes this happens where I have just given you the the total advantage. It is an 81 on the dot.
Yeah, let's go, dude. That's
If
awesome.
only I had just, yeah.
I just love when things work out like that.
Yeah,
For
I
me.
don't. So, as the winner of this game we play, you do get to tell us what you thought of this movie without spoilers. So, how did the Holdovers treat you?
I think I thought about this in the theater while I was watching in the theater. This to me is this year's Bones and All, and by that I mean I am a little bit let down by it. I think it is aesthetically very pretty, somewhat similar aesthetics too, not exactly the same, but kind of similar. I think that towards the end, this movie found its footing more for me, but especially in the first half of this, I was kind of like, I had trouble getting a sense of who each character was. I felt the characters were a little stiff. I felt that some of the comedy wasn't timed super well. And I didn't... It felt like it was like often either one thing or another, and they would forget about something, and then that thing would come back, and it'd be like, oh. Like, there were multiple times in this movie where there's a line where they'd be like, you're always nagging me. And it's like, was he? When was he nagging you? I don't know. When did that happen? And like, there's stuff like that. But towards the end, I felt like the characterization kind of improved. And so I started to get more sucked into it towards the end, and I liked the last third of it more than the first third. I thought there were some beautiful, beautiful shots in it, though. I wasn't sure about some of the writing as well. I kind of talked about that a little bit, but there were some things, like particularly the way the boys talk, and I think it also has to come with performances. But there are other things that I liked about it. I liked the handling of rich kids. I actually thought it was handled well, because there's potential for that to be a really lame story, and I thought it was handled well. And yeah, I mean, like, it was definitely like a sweet story. I thought Paul Giamatti was really good. But yeah, this is like a 3.5, probably 3.5 for me. And I would recommend it. I think it's a fun enough movie. I don't think anyone's gonna be upset having watched it.
It's kind of funny. Like, I could basically, like, that's almost my thoughts on the film verbatim. Like, I'm surprised how much in agreement we are.
That's great.
I think I went into this looking forward to it. I had heard some, like, good things, and can't remember what specifically, if it was, like, Oscar related, like, it could get in, or just saying in those sort of conversations, like, it might not get into, like, Best Picture nominees, but it's quite good, one of the best of the year or something. So I had some expectations going in, and I did find that the beginning especially was just a little bit off. For me, it was definitely some of those things you had pointed out. The dialogue, I thought I had some issues with. Just I found it a bit talky and telling instead of showing, kind of the reverse of what you're supposed to do. A bit expository as well. I wasn't going to include this because I had decided that maybe it was just a subjective take, but your thoughts on, like, the characters, I think, is actually, like, hits to something I was feeling. Just that some of the characters were not exactly fully formed. They weren't archetypes. They were a little looser, and I couldn't quite get a good sense on some of them, like, because they weren't veering to extremes. They were just too normal, I felt. What else? Love the 70s aesthetic. The kind of, like, cozy, melancholy 70s winter New England vibe. Just, like, I think that kind of won me over ultimately.
Yeah.
So while I found the initial, like, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes to be, like, you know, just having some issues, at some point I just kind of, like, switched, and it was like, oh, this is, like, the heart of it is actually, like, getting to me. You know, this idea of, like, these people who are the holdovers, who are left behind because, like, basically, like, no one loves them. That's kind of the idea. That really did, like, hit me. And I found that, like, leaving the theater, like, I was sad. And, like, it kind of, like, the feeling stuck with me. And so that, I found that impressive, despite kind of, like, being unsure in the first half. And I'd say, like, that's a mark of, like, some really good work. Paul Giamatti like just like kills it. Like he's not someone who I traditionally would think of as like one of like my favorite actors or a really phenomenal actor, but like just proving like he's got the juice here.
Yeah,
he's really good. He's
very,
frankly
very
like the best part of this movie,
Yeah,
acting wise. Like acting circles around everybody.
Yeah, I actually there are many scenes where his partners in the scene are by contrast. Like it's like, oh, you're not quite there actually.
Yeah. And it's funny where like characters are talking and I'm like, I don't really care, and then he speaks up and I'm like, I'm listening. I lean forward, you know, like the meme.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how I feel rating wise. 3.5 might be where I have to land on this one, but I could see it being a 4. I don't know. 3.5 feels more true. I'll see. Sure. I'm kind of wishy-washy about this though. Sure. And then recommendation wise, I think I would actually, because I think this is the kind of movie that I prefer to see. You know, it's somewhat like a relatively famous director doing just a genuine IP-less story, just because like
that he clearly wanted to make really well too. Right? Like there's clearly a lot behind this where it's like there's things he wanted to say, and you can feel that.
Exactly, and it's that older style which I love, and then, you know, yeah. I think it's a lovely little movie, and I don't think it's perfect, but I would definitely tell people to go check this one out. But seeing as I did lose the Predacritic game, I do actually have to summarize this movie if you are still listening and have not seen it, so you can keep listening to us talk about this movie even if you haven't seen it. I have 2 minutes to do so, but before I do, Aidan is going to say something right now.
What am I going to say? Spoiler warning. Oh, the fact that the choice of the word "say" really confused me there. I was like, what am I going to say?
I tried to throw you off there.
Wee woo, wee woo.
Spoiler time. Yeah,
Spoiler time.
That's... I like how it's just a siren now. There's not any mentions that it's for spoilers.
No, they'll figure it out.
Okay. So yeah, I have 2 minutes, and I guess I'll start right about now. So it's winter break at this private school somewhere in New England, and all the boys, like Harry Potter, are going home, and one kid, Angus, thinks he's going to St. Kitts. Turns out his mom doesn't love him, and so she's bailed on him to go on her honeymoon with her new husband, and so he's stuck, despite thinking he wouldn't be stuck. He's stuck with 4 other kids, one of whom his dad is a helicopter guy, and he's just kind of there because he won't cut his hair. And so eventually this character's dad relents, and he picks up long-haired kid and invites all the kids to go skiing with him. That's where they're going for winter break. And lonely Angus is not allowed to come because Paul Giamatti cannot contact his parents. Who is Paul Giamatti? He's a teacher at this school. He's a bit of a dick. He's a history and Latin teacher, and he has been duped into being the holdover teacher. He is assigned to look after the kids who are left behind. And because one of the other teachers who were supposed to do it this year claimed his mother had lupus. There's also a cook who has to stay behind. Her son died in Nam, I think. And she's sad about that. And so the 3 of them become this unlikely trio. They go to a Christmas party. You know, the boy and Angus and Paul hate each other, and then they like each other. Paul is sad because like he can't get women because he's stinky. They go to Boston for a field trip. Turns out Angus's dad is not dead like we were led to believe. He is in fact in a psychiatric ward. He has early onset dementia and schizophrenia, I think. And then the parents get mad at this field trip, and Paul gets fired because he stands up for Angus. That was about 2 minutes.
Pretty good. Sounds good
and
to me.
It's happy, sad.
Happy, sad.
What would you say is your favorite part?
Well, it would definitely be in the latter half. I will say that when he goes to visit his dad, I actually quite liked that scene. And then I also really liked, I liked the Christmas party scene.
Yeah.
I didn't love it, but they were like, because some of my big problems with this movie are in the scene, but I was like, oh, this is like a thing. Like something's happening and this is good. Like, because it it's like a crucible, like, to use like a screenwriting term, more or less, like, not really, but like it's just a situation that forces the characters to like confront their conflicts a little bit, like they have to talk to people, and I felt like the movie needed more of that. So it was actually funny, like the moment that the Christmas party was mentioned, I was like, something switched in my brain where I was like, oh, okay, like we're building towards something, like something is going to happen, and I understand what it means for these characters who are kind of socially awkward, a little bit like introverted, like in their, like, you know, and they have their own struggles, like, and then once we got there, like, I actually, that was really interesting. And I know I'm kind of putting a criticism in my favorite part, but I just mean to say, like, I think the movie all in all, like, needed more of a guiding light, and like this kind of thing was really, it was good when this kind of thing did happen.
I see what you mean. Yeah, like it does kind of feel like, where is this going? I took a different take on that before I get into my favorite part and stuff like that. But I sometimes with older movies, I find they are a little more rambly, and so if I find that's where it's going at the start, I do kind of like relax a little bit, and I'm like, okay, this is, the movie's decided it wants to be a little kind of free flowing, and I'll just see where it takes me.
Yeah.
So I didn't have too much of a problem with that, but I will comment on the Christmas party. I think you're exactly right. To use the save the cat terms, it's like your dark night of the soul, and I like that every character gets one. I think that's really important, and like you said, it's a crucible. It's a place where like the worst things are happening to 2/3 of the characters.
Yeah.
So
one of the characters having a really good time.
Really
actually.
good time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the fact that the other characters are, imposing themselves on him that then ruins it, because it was something so good and then it's taken away. I think that's also really cool, that it's like it's not bad for everyone. It's some people are having a good time, some people are having a bad time, and then how that changes the dynamics between those characters.
I also think it's good that, I think overall the arc that both, at least Angus and Paul Giamatti take this arc of, they have to learn to not be self-centered and learn to care and learn to be centered towards others. And so it's also like, it's an interesting moment where it's a really good conversation when they're leaving, and Mary has been crying because she was thinking about her son, and Paul blows up at him because she's like, well, this woman is crying, like she's grieving her son, and you're concerned about like going back into this party, and then I forget exactly what the response is, but he also points out to Angus points out to Paul Giamatti, who I forget the character's name of, something along the lines of, Paul. Is it actually Paul? Oh,
Paul is playing Paul. Yeah.
Okay. He points out to Paul, like, you don't need pity, or like, you're not doing this, like, you're kind of providing this self-righteous air, but there's something disingenuous about it, which is true about his character. And I really like scenes like that where both characters are kind of doing something wrong and are both kind of right about each other. And so like it was a moment of like clever writing that I thought was really strong.
From that scene, I don't think I caught that, but I did like the bit where Paul blows up at him and says, I think this must have been the end of that scene, because he says, like, I didn't want to have to be here to be babysitting you. I wish, like, I love the dialogue of this particular moment. He says, like, I wish a helicopter or a plane or a flying fucking saucer, came to pick you up. And I just love, like, the flying saucer element is like it adds like texture to it, and it in a way, like, it makes it feel more real. Like the fact that like it gets kind of more insane and it's meaner. Yeah. It's one of those examples where just like there are little bits of like really good dialogue. Yeah. In this script of like that's defined, and then there's just like these moments that Paul Giamatti gets to just like chew on. Yeah.
I will say though, for that moment, I don't know how you felt. I felt like there was a slight directorial misfire with shot choice, in that it hangs on this like wide 3-shot, like medium wide 3-shot, and I was like, and I felt this moment. I felt this a lot in this movie, where I felt like moments weren't properly punctuated because of the shot choice, and I was like, I feel like I need to see Angus's face at least, and he's just straight up not facing the camera. Like I just need to see how that played on him. And there were multiple times throughout the movie where I was like, I just need you to cut into at least one single. I just need to see this a little bit, and it just didn't. Like I felt like a bit of meaning was lost sometimes, and I felt like sometimes the conflict between Angus and Paul was sometimes didn't even feel real because it felt like they didn't actually. I felt like Paul was genuinely bothered by Angus most of the time, but then for most of the movie I was like, I feel like Angus really doesn't even give a shit. Like very little of what Paul is saying to him actually is hurting him or is even angering him. He's just like, oh, whatever. And it's like I actually, but then they act like they've had this kind of heated conflict and they haven't really. And so and I think shot choice would have ameliorated that a lot.
I agree. I don't want to get too much into that.
Yeah, I know that's a different tangent, but yeah.
But that is something that I found, and that's kind of what I was referring to with the characterization. Just to wrap up on the Christmas party, I think maybe there's two bits of that I'll touch on just to finish your favorite part. The kiss moment between Angus and is it Elise? Denise?
Elise.
Something Denise.
It was Elise Denise. Yeah.
That's great. That's great writing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
The moment where the romantic moment between them, that's great. That's movie.
Yeah.
That's movies.
I did kind of, I'm not going to lie to you though, that's also emblematic of a different problem I had in this film, where it's like, I feel like sometimes characters just do things because they're like supposed to.
That is true.
And it's like time, and it felt a little bit like that. The kiss for some reason felt less like that than when he first goes into the basement and she just goes into a quick monologue about Picasso. I was like,
I thought that was really weird.
I was like, you just met this guy literally 20 seconds ago. And I think like a certain amount of that is the style. Characters are very character-y. They're not supposed to be quite real, if that makes sense. They're not supposed to quite act like real people. But I don't think it's executed with enough precision that it feels consistent. Like, for example, a Wes Anderson movie where every character does not, like, that is a character and you know you're watching characters. But there are so many little details within that I think differentiate them really well. But this movie doesn't have that, and so I think sometimes characters just come across as being a mouthpiece for whatever the writer needs them to be.
Yeah, I did. At some point, I did feel that with the Elise character, because she does kind of show up just to be of service for the for Angus's character growth. She doesn't really. She doesn't exist beyond the scene.
Right.
I think if perhaps that character, I don't know, if perhaps the character had been in other parts of the movie, it would feel less weird. It would be kind of getting similar to the Lydia character though, and I wouldn't want to do that. Yeah. I just think the moment between them they share later is quite nice.
It is sweet, and it's shot well too.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I meant. And I also like the moment where Lydia and Paul are talking, and they're having like a nice moment, and then she stands up and she kisses her husband or her boyfriend, I'm not sure. And that shot choice is really good. Like, it's a lot of, this movie's a lot of like really good choices in like almost all departments, and then some where you're like, I don't know about that. So this is an example of really, really good, where it's using depth. They're standing in the background and we see Paul just turn to look in the foreground, and then he turns around as soon as he sees what he sees, and he doesn't overact. He's just like kind of like dead.
And it's like it's almost like he expected it. Like it's like he had gotten his hopes up a little bit, but he'd been like, of course. It's a moment like, of course this happens, because he has a good amount of self-pity within him. It's a really good character moment.
It's like I wrote that he's crushed, but I love that he doesn't like act crushed, you know? Like it's the subtlety of acting. For favorite part, I have a few. I'll stick with one that I have a lot to say about, or I don't know if a lot, just there's more to it. When they're chasing each other around the school, I thought that was so funny. When Angus decides, like, I'm just gonna be a brat, and he's like kicking the garbage can, he's tearing posters off the wall. Paul's like try to keep up, and then they go to the gym, and Paul's like, this is your Rubicon, and then he like, the face he makes is excellent. Angus like turns around, smirks, and he says something in Latin, like snarky, to be like, I don't give a fuck, but Latin.
Yeah.
And then he does like the gymnastic thing, do lands, pause, ah, and then cut to Paul Giamatti's face. I love that bit.
See, that bit didn't quite land for me either, because I don't know if it was just, I felt like it was a bit of the performance of the Angus actor and a bit of the timing, where I didn't even register that he actually hurt himself until like well into it, and I was like, is he doing a bit? Like, I thought he was pretending. I thought
it did
Angus
seem
was
like that. I will agree.
I thought Angus was pretending to have hurt, and so I think like the immediacy is really important for the comedy to hit there, and because the immediacy, it was because the joke was delayed for me because I didn't get quite what was happening until a few seconds. Like, I just felt like, it was a bit of a misfire to me.
What I'll say to that is that I think that's a problem with the editing, actually, because I think the way that works is scream, look at Paul's face, him run, hard cut, and don't show like, because it's when he pops up and he's like holding his hand, kind of like dinosaur hand. It's seeing that where you're like, that doesn't seem
you're right.
real.
If we had cut to Paul's face being like, and then like he did it, because then you know.
And that's also what the trailer does, I think. So just do it like the trailer did. They did it right. And then when it hard cuts to the car and you see Paul and he's like, oh my God.
That's a great shot. I love the shot of his hand in the foreground and he's like, like he's in the backseat of the car.
No, but what's great about this part of the editing is you cut to Paul first and it's this suspense.
Yeah.
And so you're like, what's he look like in the back seat? And he's like, oh, how could I do this? I can't believe I did this. And then you cut to Angus, and he's got like the best face, like you said, like his arm is limp, but like his face, like he's like tears, like snot covering his face. He's like, how could you do this?
And it's this like great like pretty wide angle lens too, because it like gives it like kind of an absurd feeling, like because this is an elevated moment compared to what has been happening for most of the movie, and his hand is like really close to the camera, so his hand is like really big in the frame, and then the rest of it, it's like a well-conceived shot because it's like the injury of his arm and hand is imposing on him because it's so big, and it's nice.
And I think that's what makes it really clear that he's actually injured himself. And it's funny because like also like that could have just been a bit, but then I feel like it kind of smoothly transitions into like, okay, no, but this has serious repercussions because this is a comedy drama, and I didn't feel like there was a hard like, this is funny and now it's serious, right? Like somehow I didn't even like kind of register like, oh, it's serious now, you know?
No, I didn't. I thought the transition was good too. But to talk about another thing that happens next, there's another moment of characters just like suddenly do another thing. This is what I mean by suddenness, where a character does something or something happens where it's like, I can't say that it's out of completely nowhere because it is somewhat in line with what I've seen and what I would expect from this kind of movie, but it somehow doesn't feel set up, and I think it comes from that same lack of detail sometimes. So when they're in the hospital, it's revealed that like Paul Giamatti could get fired for this, right? Because he's like Angus is like super rich kid. If his parents find out about it, it's like he's out of there, whatever. And then just kind of out of nowhere, Angus like lies to cover for him. I was like, why would he do that? Like, I don't think their relationship is fleshed out and makes sense until the last third or so of the movie. And then their relationship makes a lot of sense to me once they've like bonded a little bit, and once we've seen how they've reacted in different situations. They've seen like private lives of each other a little bit, like, but before then it's like I get the sense that they don't like know each other that well. It's not like they're a teacher student that have been playing this kind of like cat and mouse game where like, oh, he gets the good grades, but this kid pisses me off because he's always doing this. He just feels like another one of the kids, and it feels like there's nothing specific about him. And it's like I said, like it feels like one, Angus has never been that angry at Paul. And then two, but then at the same time, it feels like he doesn't care enough about him to bail him out. Like, I don't see that from that character. And maybe, I guess you could argue, like, it's supposed to be, like, the first moment of that happening. And in fairness to the script, it says after, like, oh well, now you owe me one, like now I got you, but then like that doesn't like lead to anywhere, and it's like I don't know, like just I feel like I needed at least a moment earlier where I see that like the guy has a heart. I guess okay, and I guess there is that. I guess there's the bedwetting thing, but for some reason like none of it just quite connected, and there was a lot of that with me where the characters didn't feel consistent, and so when they did things, it felt like it was out of nowhere.
Yeah, so this is something I had picked up on the movie. While watching the movie, I did find that compared to Paul Giamatti's character, who is fairly consistent of being like, kids fucking suck. I hate doing this. I hate that I have to be here. You're annoying. You're a prick. I found that the Angus character just seemed kind of like too like regular.
Yeah.
He never veered into like a consistent emotional state or like feeling towards Paul. I found that he was just too friendly a lot of the time. Yeah. Like early scenes, early being like the early second act. So maybe after half an hour, he'll just ask him personal questions, but like not only like is the delivery. So first it's weird that he's asking, like, because it shows that he kind of cares about like Paul and like to even bother asking him a question, and then the delivery is also like chatting to a friend. It never felt begrudging. I was always kind of like feeling that the character should be a little more like withdrawn and not wanting to talk to Paul. Like, why would you want to hang out with him? It seemed like he wanted to hang out with Paul.
Yeah, and it's okay if like if that is like a buried desire in a character, whereas like he actually for whatever reason does feel some affinity with this teacher, that's fine. But I do feel like the character should and like needs to not express that and like be in denial of it. And like you're saying, like when he just kind of unabashedly is being pleasant with him, it's like, well, wait, what's going on here? And I also felt that just like between the schoolboys too, where it's like, and in fairness, like there's a bit of that, like when you're a teenage boy, like there's a little bit of that where it's like you're 1 second it's like a bad argument, and then the next second like you're laughing with each other, whatever. Like, but it didn't feel like it was a result of that. It felt like it was a result of, again, a lack of details. And I'll elaborate on that now, because you touched on this a little bit, where a lot of the information we get about about characters in this movie is strictly through dialogue, and it's like rambles and expository kind of speeches that come out of nowhere often. Like they just decided to say it, or a very forced conversation happens. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there aren't enough moments of like, how does this character walk? How does this character, when he walks into a room, like what does he do? Like how does he react if it's cold? If he's cold, what does he do? Because it's snowing all the time. How does he react to the cold? And I feel like all of the boys kind of react the exact same way to everything. They kind of deliver every line almost the exact same way. And they all kind of feel the same. And I think that there are little moments where, like, for example, when Angus gets up in the middle of the night and he starts like skipping down the hall, I was like, oh, this is like a character. That's just like a little character detail of like he skips down the hall instead of just like walking, like, and you actually really get a sense of this kid like in that moment. And I don't think there's enough of that though.
Yeah, I'll say to the character, adding to that, like you're picking on like the group of boys who are left over. The bully I found is probably what you're referring to. Like sometimes he's like sometimes like he's really mean, and it
sometimes
seems
he's like racist, and
it seems horrible. Like he hates and then other times it seems like he also hates Angus, and then other times he's like, hey, do you want to bum a smoke? Like it's like, what? And I think maybe my issue is not that, characters can show different sides, or they can be, maybe one moment they're feeling mean and then another time they can be not mean. But I think it's shades. And so I think my issue is not that, sometimes the bully is mean, sometimes he's not mean. It's that it should be he's mean, and then sometimes he's begrudging respect respectful. You know, like
No,
it's
I agree.
it's instead of sometimes he's mean and sometimes he's nice, because that doesn't make sense. And I think the same problem is with all the kid characters, but more so for Angus as well. It's that sometimes there's an extreme. There's him being very, very mischievous and kind of confrontational sometimes, and other times he's just like completely normal. And I think it's hard to get a grasp of what this character's deal is.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I like to think about it. So, you know, ultimately I'm like, by the end of the movie, I'm kind of like, okay, his deal is he talks. He's a talker, so he lies. He maybe talks too much. He even says this. He like says things without thinking about how his audience is gonna feel about it.
Yeah. And that's another line where it's like, yeah, I guess you do that. Like when he says, yeah.
I think that's an example of a line that is said describing how a character acts, that I was like, you know what, that is sort of true, and especially later I'll see it come up more and more. There are some lines though where I completely agree with you. The characters are described of being away, and I'm like, that's just not true. I haven't seen that at all. So I have two examples that I wrote down. One is Paul Giamatti says, or I forget if it's a question, but the essence is that Paul Giamatti basically declares he prefers being alone. And when you've been with people every scene in this movie since after the character introduction, so like there's one moment, but it hasn't become a pattern yet.
And from the first scene with him and Mary, for example, very congenial,
bad
like. But I mean, like he from the very beginning, like he clearly likes and respects this person and is pretty open and honest with her. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like he clearly has a friend immediately.
And the other dialogue that like describes a character that I found was very odd was when he's talking to Lydia about her boss. She's the secretary for like the headmaster, and who's so he's the headmaster. He decided that Paul would be the holdover teacher, and he's mad at him because Paul failed a student who was rich, and there's been some repercussions because of that. I also don't really know what the repercussions were. I don't really feel those being real threats, but anyway, so they're talking about that character, the headmaster. That headmaster scene, just describing how the character acted, was like, he seemed really normal. Also, like the headmaster was just kind of like truly just a man doing his job. Never like, even when he was mad at Paul, was not like yelling at him or berating him or anything. And I was like, even then I was like, this is not really a strong characterization choice. It's very like just normal. But then just to get to the point, when Paul and Lydia are talking about him, they're like, yeah, he's got a dictator complex.
Yeah, that doesn't feel accurate either. Yeah, that I agree with you on that line. So I was just gonna say though, I think that it actually is true as well though, that the principal or the headmaster, whatever, that he is like a smarmy ass. Like even though he isn't like very overt about it, and I think that it also makes sense that given Paul Giamatti's character, that he would hate this guy. Like that makes sense to me. And and in fairness, like the argument that the guy is making is absurd, that like from like a moral level, that it's like you should have just like passed this kid because his parents are donors to the thing. Like that's bad. Like you shouldn't. That's a morally bad thing. And I do understand why Paul Giamatti. That was actually one of the things I liked about his character, is that like even though his character's kind of an asshole, there was something to bring us into him, where it's like he's kind of correct. Like and I can actually talk about a broader point here, where it's like his whole thing is that like these boys have everything handed to them, and like they don't know like what it is to struggle, and you know, like they have their shit handed to them. They don't really live with consequences. There's even a point being made that like they are not the ones that go fight in this war, generally speaking. And when they were talking about that first, I was like, oh, is this gonna be a movie about like how actually like we're all humans? And it's like, because that's dumb, because it's like, yeah, obviously, but that doesn't negate the point. And what I liked about this movie is that like it didn't try to negate that. It didn't try to say that that wasn't true, that this privilege didn't exist. It just tried to point out that even though he might have been somewhat correct, Paul, in saying this, like the reason he's saying that is to mask his own insecurities and to lash out. And so it becomes an interesting character detail in a character-driven movie instead of being like a point about how, like a convoluted point about how like, yeah, their parents are rich, but like they're alone. Like if that was like the whole point of the movie, that would be really lame. And so I'm glad the movie didn't do that.
Yeah, I think what's good for that is that anytime he brings something up like that, like when he says, boys, I wrote it down actually. I think it's Barton. Barton boys don't go to Nam is what he says. And why the movie works the way you're describing is because when something like that is said in a scene, no one negates it. Yeah. It is other scenes that just complicate that image. So no one says that that's wrong. It is true that they are, handed things on a silver platter. They have the silver spoon in their mouth. They're quite lucky. But it is also true that Angus is like a kid, and he's had a really tough life, a tough home life, and just because he has, he's able to go to Barton and is afforded certain privileges does not mean he is not deserving of love or empathy. And I think that's kind of what the movie is saying, but it's also like it's never forced upon us, these conclusions. It is, I found that all to be quite natural, and just like the truth of it is like these are characters deserving of empathy. But I think you're right, it makes good points.
I would even take it as like, I don't even know if I took it exactly that way. And what I'm about to describe is almost the exact same thing, just maybe just a different focus of it, I guess.
Sure.
Where it's almost like being unempathetic isn't righteous, is the point. Like the fact that he is lashing out on these kids and treating them like they're little animals, like that has nothing to do with like the class privilege that they have. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what was really interesting to me, because it's like he's doing that for very personal reasons. He's doing that because of how he's been treated in the past. It's a vendetta, and that's immature, and it's not good. Like, and yeah, like, because again, like, I just think the story of like rich kid, but it's business mom and business dad who aren't there. It's just like, yeah, okay. But like, and so that's why it's that specific framing through Paul Giamatti that saves it for me.
Yeah, I like, the kind of the exploration of Paul's character I found really interesting. I think this movie's trying to say something about like history. I mean, it's quite obvious that Paul is a history teacher. He's kind of obsessed with the past, both in just like an educational sense, but also like his own personal past. I think like we're talking about right now, like he's obsessed about that one event where he was at Harvard, I think, and his roommate plagiarized his thesis or whatever, and to save his own ass, the rich kid, said that Paul was the one who plagiarized him, and just because he was rich, he was able to stay. And Paul wasn't even ejected out of Harvard for that. He hit him with a car, which was, that made me laugh. That was funny. He says it was an accident, but I was kind of like, was it an accident? But anyway, so he's got this vendetta because he couldn't go to Harvard, so he was forced to go back to his high school, who was the only place that would hire him, and he's stuck in the past literally because he's never left high school. And I thought that was really, I just love that idea of like a character who's literally stuck in their past and who can't move on, and because of that has gnarled and turned into this like mean-spirited, selfish person who is taking out their anger on others, on his students, and so which is why
the end of his ending
is so powerful. And I was
great,
like, when I realized like, oh, he's stuck in the past, I was like, he has to leave. I knew like quite maybe not super early, but I was like, oh, he's gonna have to leave this school, like, and that's gonna be so awesome. And when it happened, like the ending really hit me. I don't think I cried, but like I was tearing up and I was feeling it.
Yeah.
The goodbye. I was like, this is a really important moment for both these characters, and I love how it ended. That whole story.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like you're saying, a selfish character who's stuck in the past has to be self-sacrificing in order to in that act escape it. It's like that's great. That's very poetic and nice.
Not only that, to escape the past, he actually has to basically he's confronted with the same choice that he had years ago, like the sticking point that he's not moved on from is taking the blame for a rich kid, and he didn't want to do it then, and the only way out is to relive that and to take the blame, but this time on his own terms, to be like, no, I'll do this, and for good reason. And so the kind of like that mirroring is really interesting. I'm not sure what it's trying to say about that. Like, you have to take. I don't know if the rich part is a factor necessarily.
I think the reason behind that is just as simple as like he just has to overcome himself that much, and like he has to let his empathy for this boy like champion him in this moment. I think it's not. I don't think it's suggesting that in the past he should have done the same thing, because it's like no, he got fucked over in the past. But
what else?
I was gonna say I read another example of a character saying something that is just like, that is not what I've been watching. There's one point where Mary says to Paul, this is in the latter half of the movie, he gives her like a compliment about her food, and then she's like, is that an actual compliment? And then everyone's like, huh, and it's like, he has complimented your food already at least once in this movie. He's been very nice to you. Like, I just like what? It's like, what are you talking about? That is not what I've been watching.
Yeah, so let's take this and go into the dialogue generally in the script. I did find that there's a lot of telling and describing how characters are, both instead of showing us and just like completely contradictory to what we are shown. Sometimes that is a good thing. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing to do that on principle. Like, it can be quite interesting for a character to say, I'm so honest, and then to show them being deceiving, like that is like a wrinkle. That's just the fact that we say things about ourselves that are not true. We show how we are in reality, but the way this is different.
The way you understand a person and a character is through multiple different sources. One of them being the person themselves, their actions. The other one being the person's words. The other being words of another person. And so I agree. It's interesting when those sources are not aligned, but the example I brought up is just like the movie. The movie's clearly supposed to be like, you're supposed to understand. That's what the basis of that joke is. You're supposed to understand, like, oh, this curmudgeon-y asshole's coming around, but it's like he hasn't been that much of an asshole.
I think generally people are not that mean in this movie, and I think we needed to dial up the mean. People needed. It's a classic problem of people starting off too nice, and so they don't really have anywhere to go. If you start people off in worse places, they start meaner, they're not friends, then it shows change. It's an arc. And I did find I'll see if there's anything else I mentioned. I have another thing.
This is writing, but also it's also performance and directing, because I think that a lot of my problems is the way characters interact with each other and the escalation of individual scenes, of the emotional tension in individual scenes, which I think is lacking. And I think that comes down to, like, you have to point at the director at some point if that's like a constant problem you're having. And then I also think it's a script thing and also a performance and editing thing, but
and production design and catering and location.
But you know what I mean, though, where it's like, and so there are moments where characters just I don't think it's written super well because the characters are kind of doing something out of nowhere, and then I don't think it's directed well because it's like you probably could find a way to escalate it, but they haven't. A good example I have is there's one moment where I forget exactly, but Paul and Mary are talking. Angus comes in and sees that there are brownies, and he goes and picks one up,
Ooh,
and they're having
brownies.
like a super normal conversation where like they seem to like each other like a decent amount, and like a small thing happens, and then Angus is just like, fuck this, and he like throws the brownie at a wall. And it's like, if you want to say that this character is like erratic, then okay, but he hasn't really been erratic. And it's also like the way that escalates, I don't even believe he's upset. And I think that's also performance, to be fair. Like I don't buy this guy as a very erratic person.
You have to be, in order to be erratic, you have to be consistently erratic.
Yes.
I love the irony of that, though.
Yeah. And like, yeah, so it's just like he just does it, and it's like, what? I kind of giggled in the theater because I was like, what are you doing, man?
I know the scene. The context of the scene is they're talking about the Christmas party. That's why she's made the brownies. So he's eating the brownies. She says, no, that's for the Christmas party. And then Paul's like, by the way, you're not going. And he's like, what the fuck? So I do think it's, again, like, the choice of, like, shades of emotions is just kind of off in the movie. You know, so this isn't, like, going too far for the character we've gotten used to. You know, like, sometimes the extremes just don't line up. It's the range is too wide. We'll see a character, you know, be really angry or mean, and then there's just kind of like a set amount of, like, think of it like a spectrum, and there's like a slider of like how where you are on that spectrum, and that's like the range you have. It's your range. And so if you can be quite explosive, your calm range is going to be further on the explosive side,
or at least you
nice
have to
side, you know.
You have to feel the potential for explosion most of the time. Then that has to feel like something that can happen most of the time. Not just like
It's
what?
just all
like,
over the place. Yeah,
I thought that was like legitimately like a funny moment, and not in the way that it may be intended. I was just like, what? What are you doing, man?
Yeah,
chill out.
More on the script stuff. There's, let's see, the piss the bed scene was one that I was like, this is stupid. It felt very much like
it's forced. Yeah,
I felt like that one was like, you know, a couple issues. One, I don't really, you know, I'm not a scientist. That's not the job. But like, do kids piss the bed that old? Like, I was like, this feels okay. So maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
but
I can tell you that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. But like, as the scene goes on, like, the kid's like, I have no friends, I have no family, like, just kind of like telling us everything, and then it resolves really strangely. Angus doesn't even really do anything, and he's like, thanks, and like to Angus, the guy says thanks to Angus, and I'm like, why? He didn't even do anything. He didn't like try to resolve the problem. He just kind of said, like, we'll deal with it tomorrow, and then we don't see them deal with it tomorrow.
Yeah, and then I will say, as someone who has insider knowledge here, as a kid who was a longtime bedwetter, he also specifically says, like, find a dry spot, and like try to find a dry spot and sit there. And it's like, brother, if you're doing that, you're on the very edge of the bed. I can tell you that from my past experience. You have to be in an uncomfortable position. But he just kind of rolls over, and I would just say, logistically, that wouldn't have done anything for him in that situation.
That's your highest
just to
criticism.
break it down. But no, I think it's really weird that he doesn't like help him. Yeah, it's weird that he doesn't help him then, like just quietly get the sheets off or something. Like, I don't know.
I get the feeling like a lot of that first act is spent being like, here's Angus. He's mean sometimes, but he's also a good student, or at least better than everybody else. And
that's supposed to be like a save the cat moment, where it's
that's what I'm saying. Is like, he's sort of mean, but also he's the nicest one of them. And I'm like, there's a lot, like, we can't really decide what he is, and we're trying so hard to be like, no, but he's nice. Don't worry, like, trust me, he's nice. And so there's like 3 different scenes where we're being like, no, but seriously, trust me, this kid is nice, because they just haven't committed to him being one way or the other. So there's the bedwetting scene, there's the scene with the mitt. I love the mitt bit, though. The mitt bit. Where this Mormon one of the younger kids, is his mitt is stolen, and it's lost, and then Angus is not even like that nice about it. He's just kind of like, just a little understanding. He's like, yeah, he left you one mitt so that it would sting all the more when you look at it.
Yeah, that's a good line.
And doesn't help him find it, and then the kid goes to the river and he throws the other mitt and it floats down the river. That's just a great image. But I just love that, like, nice but without being forced nice, as opposed to like this weird wet the bed scene. And then there's also the scene with like the kid or the bully kid just being racist, and I don't know how I feel about that. Like I bet that is what it was at the time, but also like
I bet that's what it is now at those schools.
Well, maybe yeah. It's one of those things where I just feel like modern sensibilities leaking into a period piece, and it feels strange where, you know, because the filmmaker and the audience they're making this movie for are like, racism is bad, so we have to put a scene in to be like, racism is bad. And it always just feels like they had to do it. It doesn't feel natural. And like I agree that racism is bad, but you know, like one of those things that just felt like ticking the boxes, or that's not the right word.
I don't think that's my problem with it. I think the idea behind it is that they want to, like, on some level, I think they're testing you to empathize with these kids a little bit. And so it's like this kid who's like really acting out and is like really being an asshole, like he's doing something that we know to be really bad. I also think part of the intention is to differentiate this kid as being a really bad kid, but because because of the way he acts, it almost doesn't come across that he's worse than the other guys. Like, he doesn't seem like that.
He's normal.
He doesn't seem like that worse of a guy than Angus. Obviously, like, the thing he is saying and doing is worse than anything Angus is saying or doing, but just their general demeanor is like the same. Yeah. So it's like what's going on here? And so my problem is just like, I feel like whatever point is being made by that is lost just by a lack of specificity.
Yeah. Well, speaking of specificity, and while we're on the script, I will say, in contrast, there are a couple of really good lines. We have brought up a lot of them. Barton Boys Don't Go to None was one I had written down, the Flying Saucer one. But there's two other ones that I liked. There's a point where Mary says, they're talking about Paul is writing a book, but it's not a book, it's a monograph because it is shorter than a book. And Mary says, you can't even dream a whole dream, can you? And I like that.
I like that line I like that line reading it and hearing it in the context of that scene. That's another one where I was like, okay. Like, I understand. It was a character mouthpiece moment for me where the character's just saying, it's like, you're clearly trying to point, be like, look at the arc the guy's gonna go on. Look what he's gonna do. Like, do you see what we're doing? And I was like, okay.
And then the other one that I did like is something about like nothing makes sense anymore. The world is on fire, and I think that's something Paul gets to say. And I'm not sure if I like the line as much as maybe it was just Paul's delivery of it. It's just like he eats the shit up, you know?
Yeah.
He's like, the world is on fire, and he seems like scared.
That was also a moment where it was in a good way. I actually felt the writer peeking through. There's sometimes where I think the writer really reveals himself in a script, and I actually think it's nice. Like, there's something that's just personal charming about it, and that was to me an example of that, where he was like, oh, this is this guy like contending with a modern world, and interestingly enough, like using it, like transposing it to the past in order to do so.
I think maybe the difference here is that, like, saying the world is on fire, like you said, it's that, again, the modern sensibilities, but putting them on the period piece. This works for me. Almost like maybe that feels more honest. Like that comes from, like, it feels like it's coming from a place of fear instead of like intelligence or like superiority of being like super analytical and being like, you know, the world these days it's on fire. It's terrible. It feels honest and sincere. Like, this is how the writer is actually feeling. Yeah. And I feel like that comes across really well. What else should I talk about?
I'm just about done. I have some things I can rattle off that are somewhat quick.
Yeah, go for it.
We haven't talked about cinematography really yet, but I quite liked it generally. Like I've talked about some directorial misfires, and there are a few where it's like a shot like particularly its editing too, where like a shot will it'll cut to like a wide. Specifically, it happens where it cuts to a wide and it hangs on the wide for too long, and it's supposed to be a joke, and it's just weird. That happens, but then there are also some really really nice shots. There's one I wrote one particular where there's a really nice shot where Angus is about to walk into the room to see his dad, and he's in the center of the frame. It's pretty wide. The wall kind of takes up most of the left half of the frame, and it like really, the lines draw you to this boundary that Angus has to cross, and because the wall is so opaque and it fills up the left side of the screen and we know that's where he's going, it adds to the ambiguity and the unknown of what is on the other side of this boundary. And then he's looking back on the right side of the frame to see Paul Giamatti, and he just has this really nice look on his face too, and he looks very small and alone and like unsure, and it's a really well done shot. It was just one that I pointed out. I have some other ones, but I'll let you hop in.
Yeah, that was in the hallway, right, of the psych ward. Yeah, that was good. I'll say the same thing. I forgot to look this up, but it seems like it's shot on film.
Yeah,
there
was even a thing they talked about, they credited the coloring process, which is like a film
with the classic, I saw that. And yeah, so that always looks lovely. The lighting, I was routinely like noting like, oh, this is fantastic. Lots
very
of natural
cozy.
lighting.
Exactly what I want from like a Christmas movie. Like very
exactly, yeah. It's a very nice Christmas movie. I think this one is, and one that I think would appeal to older audiences. I didn't have a very full theater, but I'm pretty sure the people who were there were older, and the kind of thing where they get to they get to do their old chuckle. But back to the cinematography, I love also long lenses, and I think that's something that's kind of been lost in the modern filmmaking sensibilities. And so lots of long lenses and zoom lenses, and so they definitely use those to full effect. And there's that one really great moment where Paul is looking for Angus, and he steps outside, and as soon as it started, I was like, oh, I know exactly what because it's such a long lens where you can feel the like if you know what to look for, you feel how compressed it is, and like it's distorted in such a way. And so he's filling up the frame sort of, and he's looking for Angus, and he steps outside and he goes, Angus, and then it really quickly zooms out, and it's a super wide shot of the building.
That's another thing I can compliment the movie is its use of zooms. On one hand, very in line with the kind of 70s aesthetic. Lots of zooms in the 70s from what I've seen at least. But I also like differentiation between zooms. There are some slow zooms at the right moment. There are those big crash zooms like the one you talked about. And I think like they've taken full effect of zooms meaning different things in different spots. I think that's nice.
Yeah. What else? I'll compliment. I guess it's sort of script, but just to wrap that up at least. What I like about this movie is, and I think I remember from the other Alexander Payne movie I've seen, which is Sideways, the other one he did with Paul Giamatti. It's really good he's really good at moments of like tender moments between characters that feel genuine and like genuinely heartwarming instead of feeling like forced or hokey. And so I felt this movie is good at that, if nothing else. And so there's some that we haven't mentioned yet. There's the part where they do, I think it's the Cherry Foster maybe. They do the DIY one in the parking lot with the flask of alcohol the lighter, and it catches on fire, and they're like, oh my god, and they have to
that's a great moment.
That's a great moment where they're
That's
just
awesome.
like, it's interesting. They're doing something interesting you haven't seen in a movie before, and it brings them together. There's the moment where it's New Year's Eve and they have the firecracker and they do it indoors, and both of these they use distancing effects. Which I wonder if that's on purpose, like as a way to make it feel more genuine, instead of being too close. I don't know. It's interesting.
It also almost makes me feel like, oh, they're a family now, and we're not part of that, but we can see it. Like it's almost like
that. The whole
that's
picture.
Yeah, that's the way it feels to me when we do it. But it's also what's good about those moments too is that they're doing something. Like they're doing something in the scene, and earlier in the movie, there's a lot of scenes where they're not doing anything. Like it's just characters walk into a room, talk, and then leave. And like in a sense, like that's the most basic sense of what a scene is, right? But like like that's what's towards the end of the movie. People are doing things a lot, and like it makes it like a lot more compelling.
Yeah, no, I agree. Other things I'll say, I love the soundtrack.
There's some choir, like this choral music in the background all the time.
It's just there's the choir stuff. I really love the 70s, very like like folksy kind of like the melancholy. I think it's I don't know if I would call it rock, just like acoustic music. So there's two artists who are recognized, although I don't think I knew the songs they had in the movie. One is Labi Sifra, very, very cool guy with some great songs. You definitely know some of them. He did the song that Eminem sampled for one of the famous ones. My Name Is, I think.
Oh, okay, sure.
Bam, dunno.
Oh, okay.
Dunno. Dunno. So that all of that's sampled from one of his songs. It's called I Got the ... Look that song up. It's awesome. And then also Yusuf / Cat Stevens has a song in this.
I've heard of Cat Stevens, yeah.
Yeah, he did a song for Guardians. He didn't do a song for Guardians. One of the songs is in Guardians 2.
Yeah.
That's the father and son song. I think the soundtrack choice is just like great. It completely feeds into the feelings this movie is trying to evoke, and I think it was really well chosen. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
It's also interesting. The interesting thing is like, okay, first I just want to rattle off. There's a couple more shots that I just think are really nice.
Oh, sorry,
I'll just say one in particular. It's right at the beginning. It's just B-roll right at the beginning. We get a bunch of shots of just like the campus. And there's one that's really gorgeous of just the shadow of a tree kind of stretching towards the camera, and we're on kind of a wide angle, and it's just it's really nice. But so there's that, and then I also on the soundtrack, I think it's really interesting to me that there's the choir in the background because. Like the first shot of the movie is someone conducting a boys' choir. That's the very first thing we see. Is that Paul Giamatti doing that? Is that Paul?
No, it is not.
It's not?
No.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure, like because it wasn't. Yeah, because we don't see him or whatever. But I just think I don't know. Like that's an interesting. It's interesting that we're introduced to that and then it kind of pervades the movie. And it's a detail that feels very intentional, but I don't know quite what it means. And I like that kind of thing in movies.
It's. What is it? What does he say? It's something compels me though. I don't know. It's from Knives Out.
I don't remember.
It's peculiar. Compels me though. Anyways, whatever. I was trying to figure out what the choir thing was while I was watching it. And I couldn't figure it out. But I agree that when there's kind of like that mystery to like. A very clear, like someone made a choice here, and I'm like, I wonder what that means. I really do appreciate that. Do you have any other shots you wanted to point out?
No, those are the main ones I had in my head.
Okay. Any final thoughts on the movie?
I think I've said my piece. Said my piece.
Okay, well, now that you've said your piece, we do have a segment, so do you want to say the segment piece?
Yeah, so in case you guys haven't noticed, the podcast is called Predator versus Movies. We've done the movie, and now it's time to get into the Predator. We asked the question, would this movie be better if the Predator from the movie Predator was in it? No.
Probably not.
It would not be. There isn't even like, that would just ruin the tone. to see, when did Predator is an 80s movie, isn't it?
Later.
Yeah. Because I was saying, like, they could have, instead of going to see, what did they go see? They go see, like, a Dustin Hoffman movie.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They could go see Predator, but that's not time accurate.
It's anachronistic. They could do a Sofia Coppola, put some colors in
exactly, yeah. That's the only place I can see it. And then the other question we ask is, who would win? And I guess in this case, it's Paul Giamatti versus the Predator. And
Paul would flunk the Predator.
Paul would flunk. I was going to say him. If the Predator was a student in his class, the Predator would have to make sure he's studying in order to pass. Oh, there's one gag that I think is really funny really quick, where it's just a shot where he gave someone an F+. And I just think that's really funny, because that's not, like, the idea, like, he's that, like, fastidious about it.
Yeah. I think someone had laughed in my theater. I don't think I caught on, but someone was like, someone laughed about that. I don't.
in a fight to the death, Paul Giamatti does fucking die.
I think it's so much more funny when we talk about this, that Predator is not like trying to kill anyone. He's just like he's just accepted the role of a different character or like something. So like
if he was Angus,
he's playing the opponent's game. Yeah. So the opponent in this case is Paul. Paul is a teacher, so he has to play the game of teacher-student. Yeah. And I think Predator couldn't pass. He couldn't pass.
I don't think he'd pass. Yeah.
I don't think he knows English. I don't think he knows any Earth language, for that matter. I don't think that would go very well for him. Next segment, we have Predator's Picks. We talk about what we have been watching, listening, reading, etc. And I have a backlog. I don't know about you, but do you want to tell us what you've been doing?
So I've been beginning I've realized I haven't watched many... This kind of began where I watched a couple movies that were like kind of 60s European, like just like broadly, like that's a broad category, and I kind of realized like for some reason just like the black and white photography made me think about noir a lot, and I was like, well, I haven't watched many noir movies, and so I think I'm going to start kind of a noir. I'm transitioning out of my horror deep dive where I was just watching horror movies for like a month or two, and I think I'm going to start watching some noir movies.
So you're in Noirvember, I think.
Noirvember. I am in Noirvember. Yeah. Although starting quite late because I've only seen two really. So I first watched The Third Man starring Orson Welles. He's not like the main character. Directed by Carol Reed. This is a British movie. Very very noir-y. This is a great movie. This is an incredible movie. Yeah. Really like tightly directed. Just love the shot choice. Really interesting story, and I think like very clearly, I mean like this is kind of in the text, so it's not like I'm picking up on this, but like very clearly a response to some like the post World War II anxieties, and like just a lot of like it's a really interesting movie. I would definitely recommend it to everyone. And then I went back and watched the Alfred Hitchcock's The 39 Steps, which I decided, one, because it's noir, two, because I know the main character is potentially from Winnipeg in that movie, because he is Canadian, and in the beginning he asks a guy, there's this like guy who's performing, and he's supposed to like, he's a fact memorizer, and he's supposed to know all these facts, and he asks him, what is the distance between Winnipeg and Toronto, and we know that he's not from Toronto from a different scene in the movie. We know he is Canadian, so there's a somewhat decent chance the main character is from Winnipeg. Which is
always fun when movies reference Winnipeg or usually TV shows.
And it's hilarious because he says, the third largest city in Canada. I was like, oh yeah, I guess it was that.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
I always, whenever someone says Winnipeg, I always do the Leo pointing meme. I'm always like,
yeah.
I'm there right now.
I'm from there, yeah. But yeah, that was a good movie. It clearly got hazed up towards the end. By that I mean, there's one scene that is clearly a result of kind of Hays Code sensibilities, like just a little bit.
Oh, that's what I mean, yeah.
But really good movie, crazy to watch because it's like, every spy movie ever clearly borrows from this so heavily. It's actually insane to watch. Like there's like a train scene that is like the exact, like you've seen that scene a million times, and it's like, wow, that's insane to watch. And there's so much of that in this movie.
When they're running through the I don't know what, like the Shire or whatever they call it wherever they are.
I think they're in Scotland.
Yeah, I don't know what they call it, but like, that's you see that all the time, and they're handcuffed together. Like the handcuffed. I think I should return to that movie because we had to watch it for a class, and I was very. I mean, that was just a bad way of learning, I think, generally, and so it's just not an ideal circumstance for having to watch movies. So most of them made me very tired. So I think that one maybe deserves a rewatch on my part.
Yeah, that was a cool movie though. But then I did watch a couple horror movies too. I watched the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, as I promised long ago that I'd see this in theaters. Wow, it's bad. It's bad. Not a good movie. Not that that's a surprise, to be perfectly clear, but this is a bad movie. And I mean, it does the thing where it's the specific complex of adaptation of either a short film or a game or something, and the original property doesn't have necessarily a feature-length story baked in. So what do? We have to make it about an older sibling who has been stuck being the caregiver of their younger sibling, and that is like the heart of the conflict. It's like I feel like I've seen that so many times. Like they did that with the Lights Out feature film. They did that. There's this, and I feel like that or a slight variation of it is super common. Of like, because the Lights Out was an adaptation of the Lights Out short film. Which
I have no idea what that is. So.
Oh really? Oh well, it's David Sandberg. He directed Shazam, but like the thing that got him like big was that he made a short film called Lights Out, which is pretty cool. But it completely hinges on just like an effect of like when you turn off the lights, the ghost appears in silhouette. When you turn it on, the ghost isn't there. It's like it's just a cool effect, and like they made a feature film out of it. The feature film I don't think is very good, but yeah, that was a bad movie. Then I also watched The Conjuring 2, and I liked this movie a lot, and it made me think about like I haven't seen The Conjuring 3, and I kind of don't want to because James Wan didn't direct it, and I've become increasingly aware that like James Wan is the reason that I like all these movies so much, even when like they're kind of dumb, like Malignant, like that was kind of a dumb movie, but like the directing is just so insane and it's so fun, and it's clearly like he's like kind of an auteur. Like you can kind of like I can immediately watch it and know exactly like, oh, James Wan directed this. Like I can see it immediately. And I need him to get out of the Aquaman camp. I don't want an Aquaman 3. I want another James Wan original horror movie because they're so goddamn fun. And I liked The Conjuring 2 a lot.
Well,
I had seen it before though.
I was gonna ask you, where are you gonna be December 22nd this year?
I will see it, but like I don't like Aquaman 1, and like
I didn't like it either. I didn't think it was very good.
But it's just like he uses wide angle lenses in a really fun way. He uses zooms in a really fun way. There's this great moment in The Conjuring 2 where it's just like he does a really good job of like the kind of gimmicky horror, like that's really like just like the fun camera movements. Like there's one moment where the boy has walked towards camera down a hall into a room. The camera's in a bedroom, and so if the camera's looking out a doorway down a hall, at the end of the hall is a tent that the kid is like set up, and the camera is just like trucking back and forth so that we can see, like sometimes we can see down the hall, sometimes we can't, and it's like the boy walks down the hall, he goes onto his bed, and then he's like, and then he goes out and looks again, and then he comes back, and he goes out and looks again, and then he goes, and then the camera stays, and then he comes back, and then the camera goes, and then the thing comes. And it's just like really like, just like, I just love that's so much fun, like the staging and the blocking of it. Yeah. But that was a fun movie.
Cool. And Conjuring 2 that's the one with the nun.
That does have the nun in it, yes.
Yeah. None of that. I'm having none of that. I've seen some things. We were gonna do an episode on The Killer, but we weren't able to record. So we might talk about it later. But in preparation for that, I had done a bunch of Fincher movies. So I'll talk about them now. I've seen most of these. So most of these were rewatches and reappraisals. So I started with Girl with Dragon Tattoo. I've discovered one that is like a comfort Fincher watch, which sounds really strange based on what the movie is, just what it is. But that's Fincher, not even at his best, but that is Fincher at my personal favorite, is when he's doing, eerie thrillers, mysteries about serial killers. Like that's just a personal thing. I know Aidan has very strong thoughts about that.
I don't like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo very much at all. I like Fincher doing that. My problem is never Fincher doing that. It's always just that it's actually because the two movies that I think we're referencing that I don't like are that and Zodiac. And my problem with both of those movies is not that it's mostly script with both of those movies, where it's just like I just don't think this story is not presented well, I don't think, in either case.
I know what you mean. But I gotta move on. I watched the game for the first time, that's perfectly fine. There's a lot of like, well, that's kind of stupid, or like things where it's like, I don't think that makes sense. But again, that's a script level kind of thing. Michael Douglas, cool guy, cool actor. Probably not one I'll feel like watching again. It's fine. You know, you watch it to complete the viewing of Fincher. I watched Gone Girl again. That one's
I like that one a lot.
That's a very good Fincher movie.
Yeah.
I watched Mank. Not so good.
Not great.
Definitely didn't care for the script. Yeah, that's just not a. I see the potential, but I just don't think it's used. That's kind of rounds out the Fincher movies I rewatched. I didn't do a full marathon at all. Saw some Giallo films actually. Our local Cinematheque is putting those on. So I watched Opera. They're both I think it's Dario
it's Argento for both of them?
Argento, thank you. Yeah, it's both. He did Suspiria most famously. So Opera is one where the cool thing that drew me in from the trailer is the killer is making the opera singer watch his crimes, so he'll tie her up, and then he's got like these needles that he's taped together, and he puts them under her eyelids so she can't close her eyes. Now, physiologically, she definitely could close her eyes. It's kind of like that you did that wrong, but the idea and the visual of it is so cool. I think that movie kind of runs out of steam, or like doesn't. I don't know. It kind of got a little maybe long-winded. I don't know. Could have been sharper, I think. But wildly entertaining, and especially the camera work is just like he's crazy.
He goes insane. You should see the movie Phenomena. I think I've talked about it on the pod. That is a bad shit insane Dario Argento movie. Like
I will probably watch all of his movies. Like it is very good.
It is fucking insane. And like I had the ending of that movie in my head for a while, and I had forgot that it was the same movie as the beginning of that movie. In my head they were two different movies. And I was like, "Oh no, that is the same movie." I was like, "That's insane." The same movie where the girl talks to the bees who tell her about serial killers is also the same movie with the chimp butler who solves crimes. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like he's kind of weird too. There's a part where you take the POV of a raven that is circling the opera crowd. That's awesome. Yeah. And he several circles. Like we're hanging on that for a bit.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. But I think my favorite part of Opera is the ending. So slight spoilers for Opera. Aidan, I don't think you're going to be super impacted by this. Okay. The ending is fucking hilarious. And by the ending, I mean like the last minute, the last 30 seconds. So this character has seen a lot of death. There's kind of like this epilogue moment where there's a very, very sudden last-minute twist, like a psych. Just kidding. Yeah. Like what you thought was true isn't true. We still have to deal with some stuff, and then they deal with it. Some more tragedy happens, and so like even when this character thinks they've gotten away, they have not gotten away, and so like I can see this kind of like weighing on someone's mind. But now things are like wrapped up. We've wrapped up the whole plot, and how are we going to end this movie with this character? The character, I truly think this character just like goes insane. They're in the Alps or something, like a meadowy field. Think Sound of Music location. Yeah. And she just kind of like pounces on the grass like a cat. She becomes a cat essentially. She pounces on the grass, and she's like think of what a cat would do. She's doing that all but meowing. Like she's like pawing at the grass and like going like hee and like looking at the flowers, like batshit insane. And then I don't know, there's a thing with a lizard, and I think there's supposed to be meaning behind that. But she like my audience was like howling with laughter because she's just like lost it. She's not normal anymore. She's like playing with grass. That's crazy. Awesome. And then I also watched another film, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I'm not sure where the articles are in that title, but that was much more straightforward. of a serial killer plot kind of mystery movie. I think that one, I preferred that one personally. The bit with the bird thing coming into the picture took a while, and it's like, what does that have to do with it? It doesn't. It, like, sort of. It does at the end.
Yeah.
Also, they just say a completely factually incorrect thing in the movie. They're like, this one particular bird is native only to Siberia. No, it's not. That is a bird from Africa, and I know that. Yeah, another thing where, like, the ending is just kind of, like, really weird. Like, we find out who the killer is, and they just kind of, like, don't say anything. They're just like, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. They're just laughing. Ha 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 ha. They won't say anything. They're, like, trying to kill someone. They're ha 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 ha. And you're like, okay, I guess that's it. They no monologuing from this person. But there's some, like, Zodiac type moments. There's one moment that really reminded me of Zodiac, like the scene in the basement. They do sort of something like that. I thought that was cool. Yeah, a very good, like, visual filmmaker, Dario. Lots of cool visuals. Wrapping this up, I saw Duel, Steven Spielberg's Duel. Mm. That is a cool movie. Like, very clear, like yeah, this kid's going places kind of movie.
That was a TV movie he did, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is his first movie. There's some shots in there that I'm like, yeah, he's got it. Like, this guy's got the juice. Just trying to make, like, this basically, like, road rage incident last an hour and a half is a feat in itself. But there's so many really interesting shot choices. I think, you know, this movie can only be so good just, like, what it is. It is kind of just, like, a guy kind of like, oh my god, this truck's gonna kill me, this truck driver. I think it is maybe the best version of itself. I don't know, the character's just not super interesting, maybe. I don't know. I didn't even like while watching, I wasn't, like, cognizantly being like, oh, this is bad or anything. Like, it's just totally enjoyable for what it is. I watched The Devil Wears Prada. That one I actually did like. In
my memory, I like that movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember when I watched it as a kid, I was like, that's a good movie.
That was fun. I just love Meryl Streep just being mean. Yeah. And I just kept also thinking about Whiplash during that movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's clear, like there's some similarities there, and being like, she is so much nicer than Fletcher. Like, than J.K. Simmons in that movie. He's, like, abusive and, like, vile. He's vile in that movie. And here Meryl Streep is just kind of like a mean boss. And I was like, I thought it'd be so much worse. So I was like, oh, phew, okay, she's not that bad. She does some pretty crazy things, and I found that entertaining. Last thing, I'm finishing Better Call Saul, season 6. I'll just say that I watched an episode, and do you know the meme where it's a black kid and he's got his hands behind his head,
and he's like,
and his eyes are, like, popped open and his mouth is super wide? That was me at the end of the episode. Like, something crazy happened. There was a huge, like, I don't know if I should say, like, I'll just say it, a big character death, one that I did not see coming. And I was like, holy shit, they killed Walter White before Breaking Bad. So, but yeah, someone who was like, I didn't think they were gonna die at any point. I thought they would live and then just, like, move or just not be part of the. Nope, they're dead now. And I was like, what the fuck? That was crazy.
What the heck?
I think that wraps up my picks. Hopefully, I haven't spoiled anything. Lots of spoilers today. Next week, I didn't even think about this.
Is Poor Things coming out next week? Am I wrong?
No, that's December.
It's December? What is next? I feel like there's something. Oh, Napoleon comes out.
Oh, it's because I'm looking to. Yeah, it's because it's. Is Black Friday next week? I can't remember.
I think so.
That's why it's. Yeah, I thought it was this week too. I had that wrong in my head.
Napoleon.
Because it's Thanksgiving. Things are slated to release on Wednesday to account for the weekend, the long weekend. So it is. There's two. There's Napoleon and my show is Netflix, so it's probably one of those weird things where it's in theaters and then 2 weeks later it's on the service. That's my guess. I'll just check right now. But I think we were talking about doing Napoleon. So assuming...
I know that I'm going to see Napoleon. So...
Yeah. So this does say December 20th for streaming. So it seems Maestro will have to wait some time. So we'll probably do Napoleon. Really, Scott's just a super interesting. Did you see he's been saying some shit on Twitter?
Yeah.
He's been beefing with historians. Hilarious.
I've seen like people being like, "Yeah, this is awesome." Like he's right, and it's like, no, he isn't. Like I agree, it's funny and it's awesome, but he's not right.
You're on the side of the historians.
I'm on the side of like, I don't mind like taking liberties, but when like the mentality behind it is just like, I don't fucking care. Were you there? Like when he says that, it's like, okay, man. Like we know, like Napoleon did not blow the nose off the Sphinx. He didn't do that. So it's like, if you're going to portray it, maybe you have a reason to. I'm not even saying you can't, but just like the reason being like, fuck you, you weren't there. Like that's dumb. Like if anyone else did that, we would be like, that's dumb.
Yeah, I think we saw, I can't remember if he said this or if someone was defending him, but it was like, I'm sure he said this. It was like, he needs to get across that Napoleon conquered Egypt.
Sure.
And he wanted to do it like in one shot and not have it be like a whole thing. So I think what he showed was he's firing cannons at the pyramids. I don't know if that's true, if maybe he just... I remember it was the pyramids because I was like, what? The pyramids? Like you'd think the Sphinx? So he might have meant that. Either way, he was like, I don't really care, because it was just kind of like narrative economy, like just being as simple and clear and quick as you can with directing. So
but like, you can show that he took, like, that's not the only way you can show he's taking Egypt, you know.
I also just think
it's also, I get why people don't like it, because it's like a commonly perpetuated myth. Like it's like like many people believe that. So I get why historians are frustrated.
You'll be like, oh man, not again. That's a historian. I just think his kind of like curmudgeonly 80-year-old take being like, I don't give a fuck. Who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
So that's what we'll be saying next week. If you like us, check us out on Instagram or Twitter or both at Predator V Movies. Sometimes there's things on there. Yeah. Maybe there will be more. I don't know. I can't promise you anything. But
we don't
sometimes
know anything.
I get follower requests sometimes. Like sometimes we get some. So you guys are listening sometimes. If you like my thoughts on movies, check me out on Letterboxd at _AliceGordon_. I've been a bit slow recently, but I do sometimes say things on there.
You can also follow me on Letterboxd. I'm 810sunny. That's 810 SONNY. My name is Wombo. I also leave reviews sometimes. I believe last one I left was a review of Five Nights at Freddy's, in which I said Fred.
See,
and so
think
that's
of all
the kind of content you get from mine. Yeah.
So Peter definitely doesn't have anything to plug because he's not here, which means you have to leave a review or a star rating or a comment. You must engage in some way. You
have to give us a 5-star review or we will come to your house.
Or give us money.
We
don't have a Patreon.
But just send it.
Give it to us.
Yes.
I don't know how.
Just figure it out, mail it.
In your phone, and we'll figure it out. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
Give us money. Is anyone listening? Say in the comments. Let's give them a mission. If you're listening,
if you made it this far,
you have to say, but it's a code word, so we know.
Yeah.
What's the code word?
It has to be what? The Predator stole my pants. You have to say that in the comments if you made it this far.
That or code word, and then we'll know. Yeah. So you could say, what? The Predator stole my pants? Or code word. And then we'll know.
Yeah. Okay,
so do that.
Do that.
Bye.
Bye.